Hey, ladies. Too funny. Just as soon as Bubbles asked the question, where's Coach Nat? Here I am. Hello. Let me turn my volume up. Happy Monday. It's your girl, Coach Nat, Natalie, the Keto Bikini Pro, back with another Monday Masterclass. And tonight, we are talking about a very hot topic. We're always talking about hot topics. This one is about intuitive eating. Oh my gosh, so many of y'all commented in the Facebook group. So many awesome comments. I was just going back, which is why I'm a few minutes behind today, going back to catch the comments I may have missed earlier in the day because we got a bunch more in here. And I want to make sure that I don't miss anyone's comments and questions, especially if there are questions for me to answer tonight. So I've been feverishly writing some notes. Let me move this window over so I can see the comments. Awesome. All right, we got Lisa, Becky, we got Erin on, we got Bubbles. Marie is on tonight. What up, ladies? All right, feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat as we chat tonight about intuitive eating. First, this was the question in the Facebook group today, but feel free if you missed that, chat here in the group. And if you're watching the replay after this live is over, feel free to add some comments about your experience with intuitive eating. The question for engagement this week was, what do you want to know about intuitive eating? Hopefully I'll answer many, if not all of those questions tonight. Have you tried it? How did it go for you? What was your experience like? All right, let's dive into some of the things I saw in the group. To kick us off here, anytime I've eaten without tracking, I eventually gain fat. I've always been a mad tracker, even way back to my Weight Watchers and calorie counting days, and now with macros. I'm very visual, and if I don't see it, it isn't happening. Data for me. I know I'm not there yet. It may be the last thing I get. Intuitiveness to me is a mystery. Let's see. I tracked for 4 years. Also, when I try not to track, I track automatically in my head. Really, intuitive eating is not possible for me, I think. Now, I definitely can relate to that when you have, I'm going to be talking about a concept that I'm going to coin a new term for this later in tonight's masterclass, as sometimes I like to do. But one of those things is we can more successfully practice this if and when we're ready, if along our journey of tracking, we are learning the concepts behind the tracking and not just focusing on the numbers. For instance, Jamie sharing that I automatically track in my head. It's hard to be intuitive because I already know, right? That means she's educated herself. She's not just weighing things out and tracking them in according to her numbers. She knows what a portion looks like. She knows when she eats something, she can already do the math in her head, which means she's learned along the way. And that, to me, what is the thing I always focus on? Being the CEO of your body, being the master of your journey. Intuitive eating requires a lot of work. We're going to get into that in a minute, but that was just a good example of what I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Intuitive eating did not work for me at all. I agree with Erin. I am a mad tracker. Data doesn't lie to me like intuitive eating did, meaning your body lied to you. The cues you were getting, you were not very good at interpreting those, or the cues themselves were not, possibly not even working correctly, which is absolutely something that can happen if we really understand nutrition. Okay, I have to track or I'll undereat. That is another thing I see a lot of the time out there. Let's see, I have been a tracker for years, but the last few months I have been eating intuitively a couple days a week when I visit my daughter's family and help with the grandkids. I cook meals with pasta, rice, and bread, but I try to avoid or limit them. It has generally been working. It's so funny because every other person said it worked for me. It didn't work for me. We have LOL, didn't work out for me. And then the next person worked for me. Let's see, I have been doing it a while now. I have really tuned into my body, and I feel so off when I go against what my body needs. I still have more to learn, but so far it is working for me. And then the other side of the coin, as we mentioned earlier, one lady saying, when I intuitively eat, I undereat. This one saying, I intuitively eat too much, so I really need to track. Whitney is a woman after my own heart. She said, I think there's a big personal learning curve with it. She really hit on what we're going to talk about tonight. Starting out with learning how to track macros, paying attention to how your body and mind actually feel, living that way for a long time before deciding to take off your floaties and swim on your own. I love that analogy. Even then, before you do it, you should have a good set of foods and portions that put you within parameters for yourself, knowing you feel good in your body and mind with those foods and meals. Also setting boundaries with what stepping outside of that looks like, using biometrics and body weight to monitor how well you're adhering to your desired parameters. The mental work to get there also takes a long time of consistent work to be established. That is getting at the underpinning of this whole topic here. We're going to talk in a minute about what people think intuitive eating is, and then what intuitive eating actually is. So not as simple as y'all think. I'm getting there only because tracking has taught me a lot. Another major theme we're going to talk about here tonight. My biggest aha lesson has been balancing lean and fatty protein. I was under the eat more fat umbrella for my first 5 years of low carb. All right, and then love to learn about this topic. It is a goal, but I have other priorities, so I know it's not likely for me right now, which we're also going to talk about. When should you consider it? When is it a good idea for you? She says, so how do you know when you're ready? What exactly does it mean? How do you train yourself to do it? Those are the big questions I'm going to answer tonight. All right, let me just do one more little scan through the group and see if I've caught everything, because I think there were some other questions. With intuitive eating, only eating when I'm truly hungry, I feel like I don't eat nearly enough. I get better results with fat loss, muscle building, and energy when I track. Tracking helps me manage my average intake for the week, which is good for those days when I overeat or undereat. Another theme here of, when we think, when we think we're eating intuitively, a lot of the time we're not eating for our goals, which I'm definitely going to talk about in a little bit. Okay. This comment is a perfect example of how I'm going to differentiate the concept of what people think intuitive eating is and then what it actually is. Elizabeth shares, unfortunately, I have been tracking, but my intuitive eating has taken over and I may have been overeating. I think a lot of the time what this is getting at is that we confuse the term intuitive eating with emotional eating or boredom eating or things that are not actually intuitive. Oh, I love this. Great question, Marie. I'll make sure I address that. Any suggestions if you are too busy to track? Absolutely, we can chat about that. I'll make sure I jot that down. And you will likely go in that category. I'm going to talk about who might benefit with intuitive eating. Gotcha. All right. Let's see what else here. I think I got it all now. Oh, here it is. Okay, here's another one. I can maintain my weight easily with intuitive eating, but I don't want to try to intuitively eat when working on fat loss. I've accepted that I have 5 to 15 more pounds of fat to lose, so I'm back to tracking. I have some questions about fat loss macros. Oh, that's another question. I'll be back at that in a minute. We do have, Jenny, if you're watching this, hopefully you're watching the replay, we do have a masterclass on on macros, on setting your macros. So I'll make sure, or Mary Grace will likely respond to you probably before I can, but we'll make sure that we get you that link. And if anybody else is wondering about setting macros, we do have a masterclass on that. If you're watching the YouTube later, then you can search my channel, although it may not be public on YouTube. There are some old master classes that are only shared in my Facebook group. So for those who are not yet in the Facebook group, please join us there at Keto Bikini Secrets on Facebook. And that's where all of the master classes live. All right, cool. That is all of the comments we had earlier in the day. So I'll close that out so I can focus here. Okay. So let's first get into some definitions. And you know what? I wanted to pull another definition for y'all. Ooh, I like this. Okay, I'm so glad I pulled this too. Let's put this down here. Okay. 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 All right. So let me actually give you all the definition of the term intuitive eating, the origin of it. It doesn't just mean eating based on how we feel. And I think that's where it gets mixed up, is this concept of eating by instinct, which can be a synonym of intuitive or intuition. I'm going to give you the definition of intuition. Let's see, intuition, the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So eating intuitively can be understood by many as eating instinctually, meaning whatever our bodies are telling us to do, right? And that's essentially what the concept is, of listening to our body and being able to follow the cues of our body, eat when we're hungry, stop when we're full. We're going to talk a little bit about challenges with that and where that can get kind of muddy, and the reason so many people struggle with it. But here's the actual definition of intuitive eating, where it came from. Intuitive eating is a self-care eating framework which integrates instinct, emotion, and rational thought. Rational thought. So now it's taking us actually out of intuition, because rational thought is conscious reasoning. So the definition of intuitive eating is actually a concept or a framework that was coined by two dietitians in the 1990s, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Reich. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. There is a book by that name, Intuitive Eating, written by Evelyn Tribole. So it is a self-care eating framework which integrates instinct, emotion, and rational thought, and was created by these two dietitians. So it's not just a term that just means instinctual eating. It actually has a framework around it. So if you've never read the book Intuitive Eating, I highly recommend it so you could understand the concept, beyond the concept, understand the framework in its entirety so you can understand what goes into it. There are 10 principles that they teach. I did start reading the book. I don't know if I ever actually finished it. I was listening to it on Audible, and sometimes it is very difficult for me to stick to a book on Audible. I get a little over it by halfway through, especially if it's kind of monotone. So I would recommend getting the physical books. Whenever I recommend books, I did Audible for a long time. I would say read the physical books. You just absorb so much more that way. Unless you do well with Audible. If you're a person who handles that well, then do Audible. But here's the quick rundown of the 10 principles of intuitive eating, the framework. Reject the diet mentality is number one. So you may already be wondering, How is this going to fit with my weight loss goals? We'll get to that in a minute. Reject the diet mentality, number 1. Number 2, honor your hunger. 3, make peace with food. 4, challenge the food police. 5, respect your fullness. 6, discover the satisfaction factor. 7, honor your feelings without using food. There's a concept I've talked about many times. 8, respect your body. 9, exercise, feel the difference. And 10, honor your health with gentle nutrition. So as you read from the top down, at the beginning, it's very much about don't restrict anything, all foods fit, all of this, right? Honor your hunger, eat. When you're craving, eat. Allow yourself to eat fear foods. A lot of that is a part of it, which can be very scary. For those of us in the low-carb space, those who've struggled with eating disorders, disordered eating in the past, this concept of making peace with food, not making food bad, that's what essentially 1 through 4 are all about. The food police are like these judgmental thoughts in your head, and they give them different names. I really like that part of it. I like these concepts. They can go wrong, but I think with anything, concepts can be taken in the wrong context. And when we are using them to justify is where a lot of these things can go wrong. That is what Bronson and I talked about on our coffee chat on Sunday. So if you haven't seen that one, it's now up on Coach Bronson's YouTube and on my Instagram. And we talked a lot about that. But then as you go down, 5, respect your fullness, satisfaction, honor your feelings without food, respect your body, exercise, honor your health. This is where we get into the balancing it out. This is where a lot of people are so afraid to eat intuitively and step away from the tracking because they're afraid of what will happen. They're afraid they'll gain a whole lot of weight. That can happen at the beginning as you're learning these things and allowing more things. And then as you learn all the concepts and apply all the concepts, usually the pendulum swings, and then you find the happy balance. Here's the piece that can tend to go wrong. Intuitive eating, what it is not an excuse to act on your cravings and not have any rational thought about it and just let the emotions take over and just do whatever you instinctually feel. My body's craving pizza. That means I should eat pizza. My body's craving chocolate. Let me go eat chocolate. My body's craving ice cream, right? There is a nuance to this stuff. And that's where all of these 5 through 10 principles that they teach come into play. Because when you understand nutrition, you understand what I like to say, all foods are on a spectrum. And while you may be craving it, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to feed yourself it. So, can you lose weight by intuitive eating, with intuitive eating, without tracking macros? Absolutely. A lot of people do. Others can gain weight going through an intuitive eating framework. Others maintain. And as I just mentioned, a lot of the time there's a pendulum because you're learning concepts and principles and you're learning how to apply these things, and you're not going to be perfect. So you'll go through some overeating. You might go through some undereating, as some of the ladies mentioned when they try to eat intuitively, they're not eating enough. So absolutely, if you're not eating enough for your body to maintain homeostasis where it is, you will lose body fat. That's what losing weight is all about. Weight loss requires us to eat less than our body needs, and that's when we lose. Now, macros also matter. And that's a reason why a lot of the time intuitive eating without any understanding or any concept or education around nutrition particularly the importance of protein, can do you a disservice. If you're under eating protein, maybe you're eating enough to feel full, for your body to feel full, and you're eating a bunch of carbs and fats and you're not eating protein, you might lose some weight. A lot of that will probably be muscle. You may actually end up over fat and underweight. So while you can lose weight with intuitive eating, for the most part, it doesn't fit with specific goals you're trying to achieve, particularly when it comes to body composition, fitness, athletics, muscle building. You have a specific goal you're working toward. Maybe it's purely focusing on building muscle. Maybe it's purely focusing on losing body fat without losing your muscle. Maybe it's an athletic goal, a performance goal, a fitness goal. But those goals require specific things to achieve. When athletes are eating for their sport, they're not eating intuitively. They're eating to help themselves perform a certain way. And here's the thing with the body I always talk about. The body likes to stay in homeostasis, balance. That means whatever we've been doing is safe to the body and the brain. So whatever you've been doing, the body doesn't want to stop doing or change the way you're doing it. So the signals you're going to get from your body are to keep doing what you've been doing. When you try to do something else, which is what is required to achieve a certain goal, you have to do something different than the way you've been doing it, because the way you've been doing it is getting you the results you have been getting. And if that is no longer the result that you want a different result, you want to improve your health, you improve your athletic performance, improve your body, it's going to require something different. And that is going to be risky to the body. So alarm bells will go off and you're going to get more cravings and you're going to get more signals telling you to eat when you're trying to be in a deficit. And you're going to get signals telling you not to eat when you're trying to be in a surplus, when you're trying to reach a particular goal. So when you have a goal, you're not going to be able to operate in an intuitive way to achieve that particular aim. It just doesn't work together. They're two different opposing things. Now, so who might benefit from an intuitive eating and when? When might be a time to consider intuitive eating? One, you have been tracking obsessively and you feel lost without your food scale and your tracking app. You are dependent on these tools and you don't know how to eat unless you're tracking. Then it may be a good time to try to step away. Cut that umbilical cord. Learn to be able to function without these tools because they are just tools and you don't want to give tools the power over you. You want that power. So if that's you, if I'm not putting it all in, I have no idea what to eat, I have no idea what to do, I lose all sense of eating like a normal human being. Might be time to consider it. You may be too attached to the tracking. Now, number two, you've reached your goal, at least your initial goal, and now you're in a maintenance phase. We talked about the seasons last week. The fat loss cutting phase, the building phase, the maintenance phase, the recomp, and the recovery or restoration phase. So you're in this maintenance season. You're like, you know what? I have achieved, I'm happy with my body. I'm not trying to achieve a particular body composition goal right now. I just want to maintain my health and stay fit and healthy for the rest of my life. Tick away maybe at continuously over the years, slowly improving my body composition. but I don't have a timeline. I'm not trying to achieve. I'm not so under muscled that I know I need to work on muscle building right now. I'm not metabolically adapted and know that I need to work on restoration right now. I don't need to have a singular focus right now. I'm just happy living my life and I want to live in maintenance. Well, then there's no reason to be weighing and tracking everything every day if now it's just about health for life. So that's a great time to transition to intuitive eating. Number 3, when tracking is stressing you out and you're one of the people I've heard from women who've been interested in joining the academy, but because we track macros, they don't want to join because just even thinking about tracking macros or being given macros to follow will completely now make me have an eating disorder. It stresses me out. I will binge, I will undereat, I will stress eat, I will obsess, and I can't handle it. First, I just want to say tracking is a tool. It cannot cause you to do or not do anything. It cannot cause you to think any particular way. But if you are struggling right now and tracking is a trigger for you right now, then maybe it's time to try something else. You absolutely don't have to do it. Okay, but what I will say, like I always say, is that your triggers are just signals that there's something deeper to work on. You don't want anything outside of yourself, the scale, a tracking app, a food scale, to stress you out to the extent that you now are engaging in destructive behaviors. There is something to look at there, and the tool is not the problem. But if that's you, if it's way too stressful for you, then it may be time to consider intuitive eating. And then Marie's question, if I am just too busy to track, she says, I have a hard time. Here we go. Here's a good follow-up. I have a hard time eyeballing portions. And again, too busy to stop and measure or weigh everything. Yeah, we have seasons of our lives, y'all. Seasons of our lives. Oh my gosh, my ladies with newborns. Like there are certain times, seasons of our lives where things are just completely on fire around us. And doing something dialed into the letter is probably not the thing we need to be focused on during this season. Totally understandable. I always like to say that we don't want to put off working on our goals. If we have a goal, if we have a health marker we want to improve, if we have a condition we're trying to heal, if we are over body fat, we have too much body fat and it's not helping us live our lives. We have aches and pains and all of that. And we're trying to achieve these goals. It's okay. We don't have to wait for like this perfect time when everything calms down, because nothing ever calms down in life. In reality, life never gets calm. It's always stressful. It's always busy. But there are certainly seasons where we are busier than others. And in those seasons, sometimes we got to let go of some things. And in that case, might be a great time to start learning how to intuitively eat. Particularly if you're having a hard time reaching your goals with whatever you've been doing, right? So, all right. I'd like to offer a new term here. Instead of intuitive eating, especially because it's probably trademarked, I want to offer you empowered eating. Okay, the concept of empowered eating. I should trademark it right away. Empowered eating, to me, it's very similar to the process of intuitive eating or the framework. But you do not have to reject all diets. I do understand rejecting diet mentality. That's the way they talked about it. Their first principle, reject diet mentality. I get that. But a lot of the time, those who talk about rejecting diet mentality talk about rejecting low carb, rejecting eliminating foods, or what do they call it? Restricting foods, right? They don't want you to restrict food groups, right? Empowered eating can be paired with dieting for a goal. It can be paired with using an elimination protocol like carnivore or AIP or paleo or any kind of low carb lifestyle. It can be done alongside a low carb lifestyle without having to reject the low carb lifestyle because, oh, it's bad to cut out a food group. Okay. Empowered eating, this is what it means to me. Arming yourself with the knowledge of the nutritional value of food, first and foremost. When Bronson and I spoke about how to stop cheating on Sunday, a lot of that for us, a lot of our journey was learning, educating ourselves, understanding what these things did to us, both in practicality to our own bodies, tuning into our bodies, which we're going to talk about. That's number 2. But also learning about certain foods, learning about the dangers of alcohol and what it's actually doing inside your body. I now, when I walk through a grocery store and I'm craving, I have a framework, I have enough education, I have enough knowledge about food that I can look at packages and I simply cannot justify to myself purchasing certain things and putting those things in my body. I cannot justify it. And this is the same person who used to walk through a grocery store, buy all the crappiest, cheapest binge foods that I can get my hands on, which were always the worst ingredients because they were the cheapest things, so I could buy them in bulk and binge. At that time, there was nothing I could have said to myself to justify not buying the junk. Now I simply cannot convince myself to buy it. Even pseudo-healthy things, because I understand too much. When you know, you cannot unknow. So the more you know about what food and fake food and non-food items are doing to your body, the easier it will be to not purchase them, not consume them. So arm yourself with knowledge about the nutritional value of food. Number 2, tune into yourself and your body to understand your body's cues. And this is the big piece of this one, separate the physiological cues from the emotional ones. When is it stomach hunger and when is it head hunger? And actually, this is something they do very well. I believe it was the Intuitive Eating book where I learned the concept or the practice of rating your hunger on a scale of 1 to 10 before you eat. Getting into the practice of rating on a scale of 1 to 10 how hungry you are. It's one of the things, I think it was this book, that they encourage you to practice getting better at hearing that hunger signal. Learning when it truly is hunger. Something I like to encourage my clients is, okay, stomach hunger, is your stomach growling? Does it feel empty? Do you feel it churning? Or is it more you're kind of tired, your brain is kind of foggy, you're just wanting something, but it's not your stomach telling you that. So tuning into yourself and your body, that is how you learn to understand your body's cues. If you are very separated from your body's cues and you don't know how to identify your hunger and your satiety signals, all it takes is the commitment to learning about your body, to tuning in and practicing and asking the question before you eat, assessing, after you eat, assessing, give it a number. Awareness and observance and practice is all it takes. So the next step, observe, analyze, and evaluate your biofeedback. That's essentially what we're talking about. Biofeedback. What is your body telling you? Inside the academy, we do that in many ways. We rate our hunger, our mood, our energy, our sleep, libido, digestion on a consistent basis, at least weekly. And you could do this daily. And this is a practice we do in nutritional therapy as well. We do the food recalls, food diaries, writing down what you're eating. How did you feel before the meal? How did you feel afterwards? And then you have data, qualitative and quantitative data. You can look at that data, look at what you wrote down so you're not going off of feeling. I felt like I was. Write it down. Self-awareness is the key. All right, next up, spend time with yourself. Don't avoid your emotions and thoughts. This is a big one. Most of the time, if you struggle with emotional eating, if you struggle with eating when you're not hungry, over-consuming and not recognizing when you're full, but particularly that eating when you're not hungry thing, you are trying to fill the space with food that could be filled with something else. So I encourage you to lean in. When you're eating and you're not hungry, go into, how was I feeling at that time? What was going on around me? Journal it out. And then this is where I think empowered eating is a little different than intuitive eating. Intuitive eating, they teach about, removing the morality from foods, right? I think that's really important. But I think we need to separate morality from our food choices, meaning we're not making ourselves wrong or bad for making certain food choices. We just recognize it for what it is. And this is where I probably separate from most of those other movements, and that is we are recognizing for what it is. We can recognize when we're making choices that are either aligned with our goals or go against our goals, but doing it without judgment. I can recognize when I make a decision to eat something that goes against my goals, that was not a healthy choice, that it's going to set me back. And it doesn't mean anything about me. I'm not beating myself up. I'm not judgmental about it. I'm matter of fact about it. And there's no point in me being emotional afterwards. I made the choice. Now I have to own the choice and recognize there might be consequences. And then if and when those consequences occur, talk myself off the ledge if I get emotional about the consequences. That's what being responsible, accountable, mature, and owning your emotions, that's what that means. So I'm not bad for eating unhealthy foods. I think it's perfectly fine to say that there are good and bad foods because there are healthy and unhealthy foods. There are foods that add to our quality of life and detract from it. But I'm not a good or bad person based on the food choices that I make. And I can separate those things. Now, finally, we make decisions from an empowered place that honor our body and our emotions. Do I think it's realistic that for the rest of my life, I will never again ever eat unless I am physically hungry? I will only ever eat for the rest of my life, every single day, every single meal. The only time I ever put food in my body forever will only be because my stomach is growling. That is not realistic. We are human beings. We are emotional beings. It is likely I will one day eat just because there's food present in front of me, or because I'm tired and I just want to pick me up, or because I am out engaging in a social event and there's a tasty food there and I just want to enjoy the food. It's okay to sometimes eat based on emotion. The goal, though, particularly if we have goals we are trying to attain, or a quality of life we're trying to maintain, a health and fitness level we're trying to maintain, is that those emotional eating moments are not the majority. They're not happening every day. We're not letting our emotions run the show. It's pairing our instincts with our logical prefrontal cortex, because we're humans and we have both emotional brain, logical brain. Learning to marry those things so we can be empowered about our choices and feel no judgment and no regret over the choices that we make. So let's talk about the how. Oh, real quick, before I get into this, let me just say, I didn't actually say this in so many words, so I want to make sure I say this. When we are eating all foods, and this is why I do not agree with the all foods in moderation, that the all foods fit. When you understand modern food technology and the kinds of things that food manufacturers can do today, and even just the natural compounds in foods like our sugar, sweetness, the taste of sweetness, saltiness, the things that pleasure the palate, hyper palatable foods, particularly the ultra processed hyper palatable foods with all kinds of additives in there, are designed to addict us. And when we are eating addictive foods, even in moderation, it is going to be more and more difficult to tune in to our actual body's cues. So when we're having cravings left and right, it's usually driven more by these substances that are hijacking our brain than what our body actually wants. Your body doesn't need cookies, candy, pizza, chips. It may need nutrition. It may need sodium. It may need magnesium. It may be needing something, but it ain't going to be in the bottom of a bag of chips. All right. So let's talk about how to practice intuitive eating. So you can do this while, by the way, if you're still tracking and you would like to be able to eat intuitively one day, but right now you know you need to track. This is what I would encourage anyone stepping into the academy, working with us and tracking macros with us to do. Start with mindfulness while you are still tracking. I think the real benefit, value in intuitive eating is the mindfulness component. When we are eating mindlessly, good luck ever changing that habit. Anything you do mindlessly, you're not focusing on it, you don't actually want to change it. Anytime we actually want to accomplish something, we need to focus on it and not ignore it. And that's what mindlessness is, it's ignoring. So we need to tune in, practice tuning in. So with mindfulness, a couple of pieces. There's the mindfulness by paying attention to your body. The suggestion I made earlier about taking notes, tuning into how you're feeling before you eat, how you're feeling after you eat, giving your hunger and your satiety a rating. And then there's the education piece. Pay attention to what the portion sizes look like while you are tracking and you're weighing out that 6-ounce chicken breast. What does that look like? So when you're not tracking, you can more easily eyeball it. So Marie mentioned she has a hard time eyeballing portions. So all you have to do is a day that you do have some time, weigh out a portion, take a look at it. make kind of a mental note. You may be too busy to weigh and measure everything you eat every day, all week, but maybe on a Sunday, you could do some meal prep. That actually would be a great way to, if you have goals you're trying to achieve and you want to hit certain macros, but you don't want to weigh and track every day, a big thing that a lot of people like to do is meal prep on the weekend. You only need some time one day, and you can cook things that are a lot easier, faster to cook, and then portion out. And then make that mental note of what that portion looks like. So that when you are out to eat at a restaurant, that's when I practice it the most, is when I'm out to eat at a restaurant. Unless I'm on a competition prep and I am very, very close to a show, like within 4 weeks of a show, I'm not bringing my scale to restaurants. I brought my scale on the cruise, used it on the first day, and then I didn't use it the rest of the time. But the big thing with eyeballing, if you are trying to hit macros, there's a certain way of, you need to be more precise with eyeballing. If you're not trying to hit particular macros, you're actually intuitive eating. What intuitive eating means is that you're not trying to hit any numbers. So if you're practicing intuitive eating, it's more about, do I have a portion of protein on my plate? I'm not going to worry if it's 4 or 6 or 8 ounces. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to pay attention to the cues I'm getting. I'm going to rate my hunger before I start eating. About halfway through, I'm going to assess, am I still really hungry, or am I starting to get full? It's interesting, they say with carnivore, one of the things Dr. Chafee says is, eat until it doesn't taste good to you anymore. And that can be very tricky, because I tell you what, if I was eating brisket, fatty brisket, there would probably not be a stop signal for me. I could probably just keep going. But particularly with lean meats, I get that stop signal from my body. I had top sirloin this morning in the air fryer. And I knew how much it was because I weighed it out. It was 12 ounces raw. And I intended to eat the whole thing. I figured I would eat the whole thing. And about, I would say 3/4 of the way through it, I was like, I was doing a lot of chewing. Some pieces were pretty tough. And I was just like, you know what? I'll save the rest of this. And I just eyeballed it, because I didn't weigh the whole thing after it was cooked. So I wouldn't have known if I weighed it. I did actually weigh the cooked portion, which was 3 ounces. I just estimated that it was probably 4 ounces raw. So I probably ate 8 out of the 12 ounces, and that's how I tracked it. But if you're not tracking at all, then that could have just been me eating until I was full and recognizing I don't want the rest of this and putting it away for later, and that would be fine. That's truly what intuitive eating is. It's not weighing it at all and tracking it at all. So pay attention to your body's cues. Start practicing. What is my body telling me, not my brain? And take a look at those portion sizes when you do weigh and measure things. You can just do it sporadically. It doesn't have to be all the time if you're too busy for that. But take a mental note when you do, and then you'll have an idea. And this is all just so that you have that education, right? You know what an 8-ounce piece of fish looks like, or chicken or steak or whatever it is. And then for my ladies who are tracking diligently and kind of afraid to take those baby steps out of tracking diligently, the first baby step you can make is take one day and practice eating without tracking for one day. Continue to track your other days. And homework I gave a client one time who was really struggling with this was, okay, take pictures of what you eat. Instead of tracking it right then and there, this might be a good one for you too, Mary or Marie. Take a picture of your meals. At the end of the day, if you are tracking, at the end of the day, track after the fact. This is what I suggested to my client. Practice listening to the cues of your body, take picture of what you eat, and then estimate it at the end of the day. See where you land. How close did you get to the ballpark of where you typically eat when you do have macros you're trying to hit? Or you can do it meal by meal. I'm going to try eating intuitively for this meal. And then work your way up to a day. Work your way up to doing 2 days. Eventually work your way up to a whole week. And know this, you can always go back to tracking if you find yourself going down a slippery slope. But if you're going down a slippery slope because you decided to eat intuitively, ask yourself why. Where did this all go wrong? Because it was probably an emotional justification that led to eating something else and then something else and then something else. So check in. Check in with the thoughts and the emotions as well as the physical sensations of your body. And if it's something you want to try, pick up the book, Intuitive Eating, and learn their framework. Go through the framework. Like anything else, take what resonates, leave the rest. Take the gems, apply them, share with us how that went for you. If you need help with it, we can talk about it in the Facebook group. This might be a fun kind of short-term challenge to do, maybe in the fall or the winter, especially around the holidays, right? When we're all struggling with all of these temptations around, which may not actually be the best time to try intuitive eating, by the way. I should say that. I said when you might consider doing it. When not to do it is when you truly don't trust yourself around food yet. You've got some mental and emotional work to do before you can get there. Don't fool yourself into thinking, I'm just going to try intuitive eating. What that is, it's an emotional justification. Because inside your emotional brain, your limbic brain knows, hey, when you're not tracking, we can get away with things. So know thyself first and foremost. Know when you are maybe attracted to the concept of intuitive eating just because you want to justify some things, or if it truly is something that could be a better thing for you to try right now. Okay. I hope I answered y'all's questions. Anybody have any other questions while we're on before I hop off for the night? I suppose I should do a little plug because we are 1 week out, y'all. Today is Monday, June 24th. Next Monday, July 1st, is the first day of our Summer Shape Up Challenge. So if you've been thinking about joining the challenge and you're not in yet, you have 1 more week to make your decision before we close enrollment. So dive in, ask us questions if you're considering it and you're unsure. We would love to have you inside the challenge. $5,000 in prizes up for grabs, not just grand prizes, but weekly prizes, y'all. We made a post in the Facebook group asking what prizes y'all want to see in the challenge. You had some incredible ideas. I'm taking those. I'm going to run with it. I cannot wait. It'll be a lot of fun. So if you've been thinking about it, once we start the challenge, there will be no more enrollment in the academy until September. So if you want in between July and August, get in now while the getting's good. Mary Grace says, let's go. Yes, 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 yes. All right, ladies, that is it for tonight's Monday Masterclass. I'll be back next week. I think I will continue this topic of intuitive eating because I just coined a term. I think I coined it. Intuitive training. That is what we like to teach inside the academy. We will be doing a lot of that teaching over this next 2-month program, the Summer Shape Up. So next week, I'll do a little preview into what that means. What is intuitive training? What does that look like? Same concept, but applied to your workouts. So I will see you back here next Monday. In the meantime, drop a comment in the group or tag myself or Mary Race if you need anything. And if you are watching on YouTube, drop a comment here. Let me know what your experience has been with intuitive eating. And if you're not yet in the Facebook group, join us over there at Keto Bikini Secrets. Happy Monday. Go make it a great week.